45 degrees might be the best angle, but since we will be throwing these outside later on, we want to think about experimenting with different angles and seeing how it's going to affect the trajectory of our projectile. And again, like I said, I don't have as many supplies to make a super long 2-meter javelin like the Olympic standards, but again, we're just prototyping today, so it does not need to be perfect. And also how heavy our javelin is going to be. So we don't want air resistance to affect it, so we don't want it to be too light and just get blown away. We want it to be heavy enough so that it's going to travel far, but not too heavy that we can't throw it. And lastly, of course, how far we want it to travel. We want to optimize it so it can travel the furthest distance as possible. Nathan and Jason say we're going to use light materials, so I think we should make it pretty heavy. Absolutely. Things like paper are going to get really affected by air resistance. So we're going to shove some paper inside our javelins today, just to increase that weight. All right, so now we're going to get into making our model. So the first step is going to be make a thin cylinder with a sheet of paper or use some paper towel rolls. So if you already have paper towel rolls, that's great. And if you don't, just roll up a sheet of paper into a tube as fast as you can.
Wait 1 second, what are we making?
We're going to be making some tubes right now. If you don't have paper towel rolls, I want you to make a tube with paper.
I don't have paper towel rolls that big.
Okay, that's totally fine. You can use a couple paper towel rolls because I have a couple toilet paper rolls that I can use. But if you need more, you can make one out of rolling a sheet of paper into a tube. Just like
okay, but what are we making?
Making javelins.
What are javelins?
Javelins are those long spear-type objects that are in our throwing sports that we covered today.
Okay. So how do we make them?
I'm just walking us through how to make it right now.
Okay.
So do you have all your materials?
Well, I do have some paper towel rolls like this.
Yeah, you can use some of those. And if you want to make it longer, you can roll up some paper.
Okay. So I just start by rolling up some paper and taping it together.
Absolutely. I'm just going to grab some of my tape now and I'm going to secure this.
Okay.
And I'm trying to keep it the same circumference as my paper towel rolls just so they fit together nicely. We should try to reinforce the handle to make it heavier and easier to hold. Yes, absolutely. So you can use tape or different materials to improve the grip of it. If you have something with more friction or less friction, you can experiment with it. And it's all part of our engineering design process to test out different things and see what's going to make our design the best. So we can fill our cylinders now with paper for weight. So you can crumple up some paper or you can roll it up nicely. I'm just going to try to roll it up as nice as I can. And I'm going to stick it inside the paper tube I just made, or you can stick it inside your paper towel rolls. And that's just going to increase the weight of our javelins. I just rolled up a bunch of tubes and I'm just shoving them inside this one paper tube to make it a little bit heavier. And now it's got a little bit more weight to it. And we can begin to attach them to our other tubes, just like this. You can either try to stick one inside the other or secure it with tape. And I would recommend securing it with tape because it is a little bit tricky. All right, so if you just tape around here, that should be able to secure it. I have the paper like slightly inside the paper towel roll and the tape as well. So now I'm going to begin to add a couple more of these smaller rolls just on the ends. These are a little trickier since they're about the same size as the other one, so I don't think I can stick it inside it. I'm just gonna have to line them up and tape it on as best as I can. It's getting pretty long now. And before I add more, I'm actually going to roll up some more paper to shove inside here. Do you have any other ideas to increase the weight? Because I know these are pretty light and we might want to make it even heavier. You could shove some other objects that would fit in here that you can find around the house, maybe pieces of cardboard or pencils, something like that. I'm just going to stick to paper today, though. Nathan Jason said make a popsicle stick frame. Yeah, maybe you could make a popsicle stick frame. It might take a lot of popsicle sticks though, so that might be a little bit tricky. And you'd have to secure them so that they stay together really well because they're a lot heavier objects and tape might not be able to hold them together as well. All right. But the reward is fun. Absolutely. I'm just gonna
so you put it together like that?
Yeah, just keep going to make it the length that you want it. If you want to measure it with a ruler, you can just to see if you can make it.
So I can make it a bit longer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'm just going to attach a couple more. And there's still some paper on these, which I feel like might affect the surface of the projectile, and that's going to create that skin drag that we were talking about earlier. So I'm going to try to remove as much of that rough surface as possible. And during this process, we want to think about all of those terms that we were using earlier when we were learning about projectile motion and trajectory and drag and velocity, and seeing how we can maximize that for it to go the distance that we want it to go. anyone has any questions at this point, you can type them in the chat or you can raise your hand. But it seems like everyone is working away since we're so quiet. All right, mine's getting pretty long now. I don't know if you guys can tell from the screen, but pretty good. I'm just gonna add one more roll. Yep, getting long. Okay, I think it's about as long as I want it now. I'd say it's about 1 meter and a bit. It looks like about the length of a meter stick, plus a little bit more. So I'm gonna say that's probably just over a meter. We'll say it's 2 meters. Yes, sure. Since it is just our prototype and I don't have any more paper towel rolls around the house, we'll just say it's 2 meters for today. So now that we have our base of our javelin design, we want to add those details that we were talking about earlier to improve the grip and also improve the ends. So what was that other type of drag that we talked about that had to do with the shape of an object? Does anyone remember? We talked about it. It was the last type that we covered. Propsy?
Form drag?
Yes, form drag. So the ends of our tubes right now are looking pretty blunt. And so we want to make it a little sharper and smoother in order to have it cut through the air. And yes, Nathan and Jason, it is the form drag. So what I want you guys to do is once you're finished with the shaft of your javelin design, I want you to grab a piece of paper and I want you to try your best to draw a circle as big as you can on that sheet of paper. And if you have one of those, what are they called? Compasses? I think those are used for drawing circles. You can use that. I'm just going to freehand a circle because it doesn't need to be perfect for today. Not bad. So once you have your circle drawn, I want you to cut out the circle and fold it in half. And we're going to be using 2 semicircles to make the tips. You're still working on the shaft of your javelin, that is totally fine. Just take your time. Not a bad circle. All right, now we want to fold this in half. And cut down that middle fold. So we want 2 semicircles. So once you've cut that semicircle, Now we want to make this into our cone shape. So if you take the middle of the semicircle, that's going to be the point, and I want you to just hold it there and then begin to roll the rest of the circle around. It's going to make a cone shape. And I want you to make sure that the base of your cone, that circle part, is going to be about the same circumference as our javelins here. So you want to roll it up even more to make it tighter and make sure that that tip is very pointed so we can minimize that form drag and that air resistance. So once you think it's about right, just take some tape and secure it, and then we can attach these to our javelins. All right. I'm just going to attach it to one end now. Looks like a pretty good fit. And again, just keep using tape. I think before I attach it, I'm going to add one more roll to increase the weight though. I feel bad rolling up all my notes. It's okay. Seems to be getting stuck. Okay. Again, if anyone has any questions of how to make the cone, just let me know in the chat and I will get to it right away. I'm going to make another cone right now just to demonstrate. But okay, I've secured this one cone on the tip. It's a little bit rough on the edges because the tape didn't want to lay down flat, and that might affect our skin drag, but that is okay because it's part of our process. We're just testing and prototyping right now. Just grab my tape because I dropped it. Okay. So if you didn't see me just make the cone right now, I'm just going to be grabbing my semicircle and I'm going to hold that middle point, and that's going to be the tip of our cone, and I'm going to begin to just roll the paper around. It all meets at that tip. And I'm going to play around with it to make the tip as pointy as I can, and also to adjust this shape and the circumference of our bottom. I think we have a hand raised, but there's no name there. So iPad, what is your question?
How do you make the cone?
Pardon?
How do you make the cone?
How do I make the cone? Okay, here, I'll show you. So have you cut out a circle?
A semicircle?
Yeah, so I want you to cut out a circle and we want 2 cones. So after you cut out your circle, I want you to cut that circle in half. 2 semicircles. And then I'll show it again. So once you have your semicircle, that midpoint of your semicircle, that's going to be the tip of your cone. So I want you to hold it there and begin to roll the paper around that tip. And once you do, it's going to create this cone shape. And then you can adjust it to make it the exact shape that you want. Does that make sense? All right. So now I'm just going to take this shut and attach it, and then we can work on the grip. Okay. Now I have my javelin. I've attached the pointed tips. It's getting pretty long now that I added the tips. And now we've got a bit of a slicker shape to it with the pointed tips that can cut through the air and increase the air resistance. So now I want you to almost act like you're going to throw it, and where you're going to hold it, that's where we want to change our grip. So mine is going to be right around here, sort of in the middle mark. And as an extension, you can think about adding things like tape or adding softer materials or more textured materials to affect the grip of your javelins. So now that we've created our javelins, our final step is to, of course, test and evaluate it. And we're not going to be throwing it right now because we want to make sure we have plenty of space when we're going to be throwing our javelins. But after the session, you can go outside to your backyard or your front yard, and you can just give it a good throw and see how far you can make it and test your different angles to see which angles are going to optimize the distance. And the thing about grip is that it affects the texture. Yes, it affects that skin drag that we were talking about as well. So once you've tested and evaluated, of course, that's not even our final step. We can always go back and make adjustments. And so as a challenge, I want you to try to make a javelin based on the actual design requirements. So this isn't the full length of our javelins, and it's not the full weight of it either. So we can go ahead and actually make one that follows its requirements. Joshua, this is not a weapon. This is used in an Olympic throwing sport. It's just for throwing to see how far it can go. We're not going to be using these as weapons. But this brings us to the end of our session. So I would like to thank all of you guys for joining us today, and you can stay behind if you have any questions. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next session. For anyone who would like to share your javelins that you created as well, you can email us a picture, and we would love to see your creations because it really makes our day to see all of your creations and how creative you guys are. All right, bye everyone. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Soon you will win gold. Not sure if I will win one, but maybe one day. Bye everyone.